Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you're watching us from, on behalf of Nepal Institute for International Cooperation and Engagement and Water Policy Center, it gives me great pleasure to extend a warm welcome to our distinguished chair, Ambassador Vishnu Prakash, speakers, and participants who registered for the event. We are so glad that you could join us today at the NICE WPC International Conference on Post-Pandemic World Order, Navigating the New Normal. Today is the third and the last day of the conference, which was inaugurated on 29th August 2020 by Mr. Pradeep Gyawali, Foreign Minister of Nepal, and Dr. Abdullah Rashid Ahmed, State Minister of Maldives, and other esteemed dignitaries. The 3 days conference is witnessing around 150 experts, speakers, joining us from 30 different countries to deliver their presentations and share their expertise with us. This is the 23rd session of the conference, and to chair and moderate this session, it's a real honor to have with us Ambassador Vishnu Prakash. Ambassador Vishnu Prakash has served as High Commissioner to Ottawa, Ambassador to Seoul, Official Spokesperson of Foreign Office, and Consul General to Shanghai. He has also done postings in Moscow, New York, Tokyo, Islamabad, etc. Since retirement in November 2016, he has turned into a foreign affairs analyst and commentator with a special focus on the Indo-Pacific region. Sir, it's a pleasure to have you here. Without any further ado, I now request, sir, to please take the session forward. Sir, the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much, Paki, for your very gracious introduction. A very good morning. Namaste. I am delighted to be participating in the 3 international webinars. So it is a timely initiative by NICE, and I would like to congratulate Dr. Jaiswal and all the other hosts for conceptualizing this very important international webinar. Particularly very impressed that we have started up 15 seconds before time. This says a lot for the caliber of the webinar. I would like to welcome warmly the 4 panelists. And before I start, let me give the floor to each one of them for a 30-second introduction, quick 30-second introduction, starting with Angshuman.
Thank you, Ambassador. Just to briefly introduce myself, I'm Angshuman Choudhury. I work as a senior researcher at the Institute of Peace and Conflict Studies, where I also coordinate the Southeast Asia Research Program. I particularly look into Myanmar, and my own research area is the internal armed conflict in Myanmar and Myanmar's neighborhood relations, and the peace process that's going on there. But besides that, I also look into India-Bangladesh relations, BIMSTEC relations, and how crisis situations within BIMSTEC, for instance, the Rohingya crisis, have shaped.
Yeah, thank you, Angshuman. Aparajita.
Hi everyone, good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Aparajita, and I'm working as assistant professor in GJ College, Patliputra University. And I have done my PhD from Jawaharlal Nehru University under the supervision of Professor Amita Batra, and my PhD thesis is on South Asia and anti-dumping dispute settlement at the World Trade Organization. And my areas of interest are South Asia, SAARC, regional integration, WTO, dispute settlement mechanism, and foreign policy. Thank you.
That's
so much.
quite a wide canvas. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Hoimonti.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Hoimonti Barua, and I'm from Bangladesh. I'm a visiting fellow at NICE, and I'm also working as a researcher with the Center for Participatory Research and Development based in Dhaka. And I've done my PhD from Jawaharlal Nehru University, where I looked into the India-Bangladesh foreign policy. And my area of interest has majorly been the foreign policy of India and Bangladesh, and climate change and migration and displacement. Thank you.
Lovely. And then Priyanjali Simon.
Yes, sir. So I just graduated from Manipal Academy of Higher Education, finished my master's in geopolitics and international relations. My areas of interest have been the Indo-Pacific, US foreign policy, European Union affairs, and US counterterrorism efforts post 9/11.
Thank you, folks. You have been amazing. We have exactly 86 minutes to go before the close of the program. And we will very strictly adhere to the time frame. We have 4 topics, one more important than the other. I'm sure I can sense it, and I'm confident that we will have a very productive and interactive session. I assure you that I will, although I love my voice, I will try not to, I'll be very brief and disciplined, and you will also indulge me by doing so. The format is that I will give a 10-minute prompt to everybody, every speaker, and then you have 2 minutes to wind up. So you have to wind up at 12 minutes sharp, even if you're in mid-sentence. We will then have a free-flowing interaction very briefly with crisp interjections, and next open up the session to the house for a Q&A session. So let me start with Angshuman, who will be talking about an area of his specialization, navigating the crises and flux in the BIMSTEC region. Well, BIMSTEC, as I see it, is a bridge between ASEAN and South Asia. It has of late become a part of the popular vocabulary in India and also in, I hope, in other BIMSTEC countries. It underlines India's neighborhood first policy, and you would recall, or some of you may know, that Prime Minister Modi had invited BIMSTEC leaders this time to his swearing-in ceremony in May 2019. The key focus is on connectivity, security, counter-terrorism, and people-to-people ties. But there are challenges, and first and foremost is, as I call it, the implementation blues. The implementation process is rather tardy. Also, yes, practically all BIMSTEC countries are facing headwinds, economic, political, and security. There are many questions about the commitment of member states to BIMSTEC. Is the agenda too ambitious? Are there resource constraints? And then, if possible, Angshuman, I would like you to reflect on a question whether the Asian regionalism is weaker than Europe's or Africa's. What is the future of BIMSTEC? Thank you very much. Go ahead. Your time starts now. 10 minutes. Or I'll give you a 10-minute prompt.
Okay. Thank you, Ambassador. And I think you have already given a very good rundown of the basic structure, the basic dynamics, and the issues with BIMSTEC. I'm just going to begin with BIMSTEC and talk a little bit about BIMSTEC and sort of segue into something that Pramod has asked me to work on, and also because particularly I work on this closely, which is the Rohingya crisis. So without wasting much time, I'm going to begin with the big picture when it comes to BIMSTEC, which is, these are the statistics which are often quoted, but I find them very reflective of why the Bay of Bengal region is so crucial to not just the regional architecture, but also individual countries, is that it's home to 1.5 billion people, which is about 22% of the world population. I mean, if we think about it, Bay of Bengal isn't relative to other supranatural unions. It's not, the BIMSTEC is not talked about as much, but 22% of the world's population is a massive share, and that itself shows the importance of the region. It's natural that when a region has such a huge population, a crisis like the COVID-19 pandemic is bound to hit that region and disrupt the regular flows within that region very severely. So yeah, COVID has hit the BIMSTEC region very hard. It's disrupted physical connectivity, it's disrupted trade links, it has obviously disrupted, scheduled meetings, conferences, and summits. And more importantly, I would say most importantly, it has compelled member states, particularly the smaller member states, to sort of diversify their political and geo-economic choices, or look elsewhere in order to recover in the post-pandemic phase. And I think this is where the crux of BIMSTEC's post-pandemic fusion lies, as the ambassador said, the level of commitment that each country has, or the level of faith that each member state has on BIMSTEC. because while there has been a lot of activity, a flurry of activity in the last decade on BIMSTEC, including the setting up of the Secretariat in Dhaka in 2014, the Kathmandu Summit, which had certain remarkable outcomes. While these things happen, I mean, BIMSTEC has ultimately gained a bad name for making promises and agreeing to things and actually not doing them, right? So I think this is the perennial anathema that BIMSTEC faces in terms of a regional multilateral organization. Now I think the the last major meeting, BIMSTEC meeting, that happened was in around June, in February in Delhi, on drug trafficking. I think after that the pandemic came in and all the mobility was shut off, so there could be no meetings. But I think there's a virtual senior officials meeting, or SOM, that is scheduled for day after, if I'm not wrong, in Colombo. And I think one of the key agendas of that meeting is to discuss the post-COVID-19 recovery plan for the region. So that's a positive sign that there is still continuity in the BIMSTEC structure despite the pandemic. There is also just a few days, couple of days back, we saw Myanmar, the Myanmar Parliament sign the BIMSTEC convention. So there are things happening, of course, within the BIMSTEC framework, but a lot of it will depend. A lot of the success of BIMSTEC will actually depend on whether the member states are able to actualize what they have agreed over the past few years, or what they're going to agree in the upcoming conferences. Now, this is something that I have sort of worked on about 3 months back when the pandemic started. It is sort of looking into what kind of collaborations the region can do over the pandemic. Now, one thing that glaringly stood out was that there was a SAARC meeting on the pandemic, on COVID-19. Even a COVID-19 emergency fund was set up within SAARC. But we did not see any such meeting happen within BIMSTEC, right? And I personally found that, I personally read a lot into it, because I found that extremely problematic and mismatching with India's foreign policy priorities, or even the region's foreign policy priorities, because we saw a lot of activity happen around BIMSTEC over the last decade. Now that there's a crisis at hand and that structure is not being activated, I think there's a shortcoming, there's a lapse there, and member states need to reevaluate that, whether there needs to be any joint, cohesive and institutionalized action. Now, why is it important that BIMSTEC holds a SAARC-like meeting on COVID-19? As I already said, the bare demographic statistics tell us that 22% of the world's population reside in this particular area, in this particular region, and automatically it should be important for the region to come together to sort of mitigate a demographic threat that the pandemic poses here. In fact, a very physical threat, right? There is also the bit about what Ambassador mentioned, that BIMSTEC is actually the gateway or the interface between South Asia and Southeast Asia, right? And both these regions have been very heavily hit by the pandemic. More importantly, one of the member states of BIMSTEC, which is Thailand, you could say it's a regional powerhouse, sub-regional powerhouse within Western Southeast Asia. And Thailand has had a fairly remarkable experience with controlling COVID-19. It was probably one of the earlier success stories, and there is some degree of lessons that the other member states can learn from Thailand.
What did Thailand do differently, if possible?
Right. I think they were very prompt in actually imposing the lockdowns and identifying clusters in the initial phases, and identifying the main hotspots and actually zeroing down on those hotspots rather than imposing a blanket sort of mitigation policy. So, and this is even, I say this even more so because Thailand also happens to be the leader of the health vertical within BIMSTEC. So I think there's a capacity there for other member states, including India, to sort of pick up lessons and best practices from Thailand's experience with COVID-19. That is one reason, but the clearer reason that's staring right in front of us is that the BIMSTEC region shares a direct border with, let's say, Myanmar, right? Now Myanmar, the initial caseload was very low, but at the time when we were looking into potential collaboration, at that time the caseload was low. But now there's a sudden spike in cases in Myanmar, particularly Rakhine State, which is very proximate to Bangladesh and India. Right? So there is actually a physical impetus or imperative for BIMSTEC to collaborate to ensure, most obviously, that cross-border transmissions do not happen in the future, right? And also, for instance, India has already been working on in the health sector in Myanmar, for instance. The Indian pharmaceutical companies have been trying to sort of get into that market for a long time now. So I think the pandemic and the post-pandemic period can be a very good springboard for greater health collaboration between Southeast Asia and South Asia via the BIMSTEC framework. There will be, member states will have to take some decisive action, but if they manage to do so, then I believe BIMSTEC can emerge as an ideal model of health cooperation in the post-pandemic phase for the entire world. Now, as Ambassador also alluded to, I think despite all the successes and the sort of conceptual successes, I think BIMSTEC still faces a lot of severe structural and normative challenges. I think clearly two distinct places in structural and normative, which is, you know, a lot of this challenge has to do with how the smaller South Asian powers actually look at India's role in the region. I mean, there's always been this overhang of how India is an hegemon in the region and how India dominates the region, which doesn't allow space for smaller countries. I think this is very critical for India also to understand that there are certain sensibilities of smaller powers that India must take into account if it wants BIMSTEC to work. It's a difficult choice for both India and Bangladesh. For India and the smaller powers, but a lot of this is going to shape how the regional architecture is going to come out, right? There is also a lack of sort of organizational structure and chain of command within BIMSTEC. A lot of work on this regard was done in the 4th summit in Kathmandu, and I was very happy to see an entire section dedicated to the organizational framework and strengthening their organization framework. I think BIMSTEC has to look into that also. I mean, and I think very importantly, I think it's time we realize that the COVID-19 pandemic is actually the litmus test for BIMSTEC. If BIMSTEC manages to sail out of this and actually come out, sort of draft a proactive post-pandemic recovery program, then I think BIMSTEC, for a long time, the member states within BIMSTEC will be able to repose their fate in the sort of regional architecture. And of course, there's a growing sense in Delhi that China is chipping into or trying to saturate the market within BIMSTEC to a point where member states will not see any more distinct advantage in banding within the Bengal structure, and rather look to China, and that's a nagging worry in Delhi, of course.
10 minutes.
Sure. I have 2 more minutes, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the bigger point here that I want to make is that BIMSTEC will survive and work only insofar as, as I said, the member states find something, particularly the smaller member states, find something meaningful and beneficial in it, right? There's a lot of talk about making BIMSTEC into a region or hub of manufacturing as in the post-pandemic phase, as production shifts elsewhere, production moves out of China. But in order to do so, member states will have to take certain very decisive actions. For starters, it will have to complete or strengthen the pending sort of connectivity projects. For instance, the coastal shipping agreement, right? The motor vehicles agreement. These things have to be finalized, because without connectivity, there will be no trade. As simple as that. If there is no trade, then BIMSTEC will also fail to take advantage of, let's say, global value chains. And I think that was quite looking up. Very, very much in the pre-pandemic years. So I think if BIMSTEC doesn't work on it, then its promises and agreements and its potential will remain confined to the paper, right? Because there is also one point that greater economic integration in the future would also mean greater mobility, physical mobility, and greater people-to-people contacts, which means higher chance of pathogens to spread across these borders in the future. If we have to, God forbid, but if we face such a pandemic in the future. So I think these things BIMSTEC will have to be very careful about, and also sort of focus dominantly on not just traditional security threats to the region, but also non-traditional security threats, which this pandemic proves to us. I guess I have completed my 12 minutes. Um, I could not touch on the Rohingya issue, but I don't want to exceed the time.
Thank you very much. I have done amazingly in terms of time. Compliment you for a very succinct and pithy presentation. You have flagged all the important points, and I particularly like 2 or 3 points that you have made. Everything is significant about India's image. I agree that that shapes the decisions and behavior and responses of other countries. You hit the nail on the head when you spoke of implementation. There is a gap between promises and implementation, and that needs to be plugged. You are absolutely right that COVID does offer an opportunity to enhance cooperation in the health sector and to imbibe the best practices. So compliments. We will come back to the discussion after everybody is presented. Next, I would be inviting Aparajita, but before that, let me just say that she is going to talk of, again, a very important topic of the possibility of revival of SAARC. SAARC has been around for 35 years, but it has struggled literally from day one. The critics, I said, call it a zombie or even an unwanted child, malnourished and underdeveloped. The reasons we know from my vantage point, there is one naysayer in the grouping, and that has been the reason why it has stymied the progress of SAARC. India reached out to SAARC nations to assist with the COVID crisis, as Angshuman mentioned. Prime Minister Modi held the first virtual SAARC summit on the 15th of March. All nations except one, again, warmly welcomed it. A SAARC emergency fund was set up, was put to good use. But again, we are back to square one. So the question that I am interested to hear an answer, if possible, Aparajita, is what is the future of SAARC? Can it ever take off? Well, the floor is yours. 12 minutes. I'll give you a 10-minute prompt. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, sir. I will be speaking on the topic COVID-19 and revival of the SAARC. As we all know that COVID-19 has impacted the social and economic activity of the world negatively to a large extent, it has also demonstrated the need for coordinated efforts not only within nations but also beyond its border to control the spread of virus and protect health of the people. Such coordinated effort can be seen in case of the SAARC that has been dysfunctional for long periods since its establishment in 1985. Parallel to the global health emergency of a fast spreading virus, SAARC came back to life a few months ago after being declared dead in 2016. The initiative was taken by Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who took a lead through video conferencing and discussed mutually coordinated plans with other members of the SAARC to deal with the pandemic. Modi said, "We can respond best by coming together, not growing apart, collaboration, not confusion, preparation, not panic." This is in line with India's neighborhood first policy, which was also evident by the presence of state heads during Modi's swearing in ceremonies. He also proposed that the leadership of SAARC nations chalk out a strong strategy to fight coronavirus. The proposal was welcomed by all nations except Pakistan, which later participated in the video conferencing. The initiative was hailed by the current Secretary General of the SAARC, Veerakun, a Sri Lankan diplomat, on developing a strategy to fight the virus together. The virtual meeting included leaders of 7 countries that are Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Maldives, Nepal, Sri Lanka, and a special health advisor to Pakistan Prime Minister. They discussed the rising cases of pandemic in the subcontinent, discussed measures to be taken to prevent the spread of virus and possible treatment method. Now, why cooperation on the platform of SAARC was important? The absence of SAARC creates a vacuum in the region as it focuses more on reinforcing regional trade and cultural links. Maldives and Sri Lanka had complained of decline of tourism that has affected its economy in negative sense. A collaborative effort was required to uplift the economy. Afghanistan is a landlocked country and shares border with Pakistan and Iran. Pakistan had closed its border, and in Iran, virus had infected to large extent. Major SAARC countries share borders with China from where virus was spread. Population density is very important in case of South Asia as it is very high and there are more chances of rapid transmission of infection. Now, it is important to look into the outcome of the virtual meeting. India proposed for SAARC emergency fund for COVID-19 to fight the pandemic, extending $10 million as India's contribution for the fund, and other countries contributed according to their abilities. It also proposed for formation of rapid response team of doctors, specialist testing equipment, and attendant infrastructure to combat COVID-19. After the leaders' video conference, the senior health professionals of SAARC countries also met on another video conference on March 26 to exchange experiences of combating the spread of pandemic. Now, the other important thing was SAARC Disaster Management Center that set up a website on COVID-19 for shared use of SAARC countries. A special cell in the Ministry of External Affairs of India coordinated and monitored coordination of regional effort with SAARC countries. India took active participation in Pakistan hosting a video conference with SAARC Health Minister on 23rd April, reaffirming India's interest and commitment towards the regional organization. In the meet, India highlighted a new app, Arogya Setu, which aims to maximize community outreach within the region and developed an electronic platform, Coinex, which is SAARC COVID-19 information exchange platform for the exchange of specialized information and tools on COVID-19 for use among SAARC countries. Now, it is vital to see why such meeting of SAARC members was important. The meeting was important for few reasons. First, it is a crisis turned opportunity by bringing together countries of South Asia for the first high-level SAARC meet since 2014. Moreover, this was the organization's first meeting in 4 years after India had declined to meet in Islamabad in 2016 for 19th SAARC summit, citing cross-border terrorism as the basis and shifted its focus towards other regional organizations like BIMSTEC. Then, other countries of SAARC like Afghanistan, Bangladesh, and Bhutan had also pulled out, leaving SAARC directionless and shifted from a state of dysfunction to coma. India's decision to hold the conference, despite its open reservation against talking to Pakistan, reflects a befitting attitude of a leader nation that has risen above bilateral animosity to engage in all nations to think of a larger regional good. This was evident when India chose to ignore Pakistan's use of SAARC forum to take up the Kashmir issue, even though the meet had a different and much more pressing agenda. Major countries of the world, including the USA and Russia, have lauded India's effort towards preparing South Asia for a collective response. The call for coordinated effort gives the message that India would always stand by its neighbors at the time of natural disasters and is always prepared to preserve and promote for common good. Another important observation is that though India considered BIMSTEC as alternative to SAARC, citing the problems with Pakistan that hindered many issues on the SAARC platform, but the call for collective effort on SAARC platform by India demonstrates that BIMSTEC is not an alternative to SAARC but an organization that complements SAARC. It coexists with SAARC but does not replace it. An explanation could be that as Modi seeks to transform India into a leading power, this global tragedy offered him an opportunity to showcase India's leadership in the region. India had also dispatched a 14-member medical team from its defense forces, including doctors and paramedics, to Maldives to assist in fighting the pandemic. This initiative is important as perhaps this is the first ever Indian medical team to go to another country. India has also proposed to send a rapid response team of medical professionals to Nepal to assist the latter in fighting the COVID-19 outbreak. According to SD Muni, Modi's initiative may or may not fully succeed in eradicating the epidemic in a densely populated South Asia, which has very poor public health awareness and infrastructure, but it has in it the promise to bring SAARC back to life. To conclude, I would like to say that India's initiative is a stepping stone in the revival of SAARC. Over the years, SAARC has had lost its significance and India got involved with other regional organizations like BIMSTEC. But with emergence of COVID-19, India has initiated for collaborative effort with its neighbors to rebuild SAARC. Interestingly, Pakistan's less friendly responses have not deterred India from continuing its engagement. India's initiative in the meeting hosted by Pakistan suggests that Indian side has cast aside the differences with Pakistan and is willing to strengthen multilateral cooperation. However, only time will prove if the cooperation in SAARC will move towards the formation of an efficient regional organization or it will remain dysfunction organization. The political will and trust among countries can only take SAARC to its destination of successful regional organization. If countries succeed in cooperating, then they could set an example before the world of countries coming together during a time of crisis for the greater good of humanity despite deep political differences. I will end with the quote of Michael Leitman who said, most of all, coronavirus is teaching us a lesson in mutual responsibility. It is forcing us to recognize the painful fact that we are interconnected and interdependent the world over. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Aparajita. You have 3 minutes in your bank balance, which you can use whenever you want to. But, you have shown that brevity is the soul of the wit. And you have given us a very good perspective of why SAARC is where it is, the efforts being made. I have a slight difference of opinion with you when you say that India has cast aside its misgivings about Pakistan. That is not the case because while we have no difficulty in engaging with Pakistan, we are very clear, as is been said, that terror and talks cannot go together because that is something that our neighbor is continuing with. And they have been the naysayer because practically every initiative has been stymied. But we can either keep complaining or look ahead. We are very keen to look ahead, but certainly it's important that the infrastructure of terror that goes against India, targets India, is brought to a close. And yes, I am with you there that, the responsibility is on India. I am very clear about it. We are geographically the largest country in the region. We are the largest economy. We are hoping that we will be the third largest economy. It is our responsibility to allay the concerns, genuine concerns of our neighbors. If there are misplaced concerns, well, that is something we cannot do much about, but they will also get allayed. And we need to develop a stake, help our neighbors to develop a stake in our progress so that our progress becomes their progress. And if we can have that kind of a synergy where our neighbors, SAARC neighbors, know that we become the tide that will be lifting all the boats, I think it will make a difference. But I have no doubt that the ball is in India's court. Well, thank you very much. We will continue our discussion again on some of the vital points that you have raised. In fact, I would request all members, all panelists to give these issues a thought. And it will not just be the panelists who spoke of a subject, but all panelists I will be inviting to contribute their thoughts on this and on the subjects that they have referred to and other subjects. Now, before I hand it over to the floor to Dr. Hoimonti, I must say that let me speak from on my own behalf for a moment. I have been following the rise of Bangladesh for a while. I must say that I'm a fan of what Bangladesh has done in the particularly in the area of socioeconomics. The social indices, some of the progress that Bangladesh has made in terms of socio indices are impressive. And I, for one, believe that if we get our equation with Bangladesh right, and we are heading in that direction, I think we will get South Asia right. India-Bangladesh ties have deepened considerably. That's a matter of great satisfaction. Again, as I said it earlier, and I say it again, we need to do more. I'm so happy that many issues and irritants have been resolved because of the political will on both sides. At the same time, we find that the Chinese footprint in Bangladesh, and for that matter, the SAARC region, is growing, and it is very natural. There is no way that Chinese footprint will not grow. They have the money power, they have the determination, and let's face it, all countries, not just in South Asia, but the world over, need assistance to develop their infrastructure. Some of the figures that I hear and read about the global need for infrastructure development are almost $1 trillion a year. So these are the kind of figures that we need, and China is making providing a lot of assistance, including in terms of BRI to Bangladesh. It is for Bangladesh to decide and analyze the cost benefit. What seems to be profitable at first glance may or may not turn out to be so. There are concerns that we have, especially in terms of India's security, because that is the only consideration that we would request our neighbors to give us to be mindful of India's security interests. But as I said, we are very proud of our relations with Bangladesh. So much of political capital has been invested, and I am very keen and look forward to hearing the panelists' viewpoints on how the triangular relationship, not the triangular relationship, but especially how is it she is looking at the triangle. Is there a triangle or there are two bilaterals? Dr. Hoimonti, the floor is yours, and you are requested to wind up in about 12 minutes.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Vishnu Prakash sir. You have already set a premise for what I am going to speak about right now. However, I'm going to just start by thanking NIICE and WPC for collaborating and organizing this event that has been so informative and educative so far. So today, I'm going to put forward a few points on the Bangladesh-China-India relations, which is influenced by a number of factors such as trade, border, aspirations, nationalistic bearings, etc., that further determine their foreign policy making. But I'm going to just narrow down on a few important points. So a lot has been going on already this year due to a sudden spread of the pandemic that has hit.
Hoimonti, can I request you to switch off your video because there is some transmission issues. If you switch off your videos, the audio will become better also. And please unmute yourself.
Am I audible?
Very much so, and much better now, because at times I find that both audio and video don't work. So please go ahead.
Okay. So a lot has been going on this year due to the sudden spread of the pandemic that has hit the national health structure, along with large number of morbidity rates in countries globally. But the pandemic has also stirred the political temperaments that questions the changing dynamics of power structures in world politics. A great deal has been also happening in the South Asian front as well, with the persistent India and Pakistan tensions at the LOC on the one hand, and the India-China war at the LSE on the other. What adds to the woes is the growing bitterness between New Delhi and Nepal. And at this juncture, can India give space to any distress with Bangladesh? That is an important question, because India and Bangladesh relations have been put under the radar quite a few times, especially each time there is a communication between Bangladesh and China regarding any cooperation or collaboration. Most recently, the China-Bangladesh new economic diplomacy that took place buzzed the media houses and also the academia and India's Indian academia. And Indian Foreign Secretary Mr. Harsh Vardhan Shringla's sudden visit to Bangladesh has also stirred a lot of discussions and speculations. India has also given rise, but with China's growing ambition and
Hoimonti, we will give her another 30 seconds because it's possible that there's a power failure. And if she is not back, we will temporarily put her presentation on hold and move to the final presenter. But let us just wait for 30 seconds for her to come back. She's back, I think. Hoimonti, can you hear me? Please unmute yourself if you can hear me. All right. So we will temporarily put her presentation on hold and let us move to the fourth and the last, not the last, but the next presenter, Priyanjali Simon, who has just graduated from the Manipal Academy of Higher Education. And she would be talking about China's health diplomacy towards the European Union and its implications. Now, from my perspective, let's leave aside the conspiracy theorists. It is very evident, and there is consensus that at the least China hid the coronavirus for weeks. Even after informing the WHO, it did not inform the rest of the world. And as a result, the virus multiplied. China even allowed its citizens to travel abroad, including from Wuhan. And we all know that the devastation it has caused, it has become a black swan event that everybody dreaded but hoped it will not happen. And given its aging population and also the presence of the sizable Chinese diaspora, Europe has been the worst hit or very badly hit. Significantly, 80% of the coronavirus cases have been reported, 80% from the developed Western world. After this happened, China decided one fine morning to take control of the narrative, change the narrative, and try to persuade the world to see it as a country which has helped them get over the coronavirus, and started providing corona-related medical supplies to many countries, especially Europe. By the way, Europe has reached a stage where its dependence on medical supplies is so much that Britain did not even have paracetamol to deal with the crisis which India supplied. But I'm getting ahead of the narrative. So China started providing medical supplies mostly on commercial terms, but also quote unquote as a goodwill gesture. But soon country after country in Europe discovered that a bulk of the rapid test kits, face masks were substandard, were defective, some were even used. And many countries went public. Many countries returned the supplies which they had got at a high cost. That Chinese companies were not above profiting even in times of a pandemic, has dealt a body blow to the Chinese image. Question is it a temporary phenomena? Would the Europe or EU or EU and European countries, chastened by their experience of total dependence on China for critical medical supplies, now onshore or near shore facilities for production of medication? Will they reduce the dependence on China? How will their experience impact their attitudes in general? There are many questions, but I'm sure we'll get the answer from the panelists to some of these questions. My dear, the floor is yours. Go ahead, please.
All right, sir. Thank you so much. I think you've encapsulated just about everything that my presentation is going to cover. So I have a presentation ready and I will quickly run you through this.
Please.
Right. So this is my presentation: China's health diplomacy towards the European Union and its implication. Like you rightly said, sir, COVID-19 has become a black swan situation, black swan event, and it has altered the planned trajectory of China's domestic policies as well as its engagement with the rest of the world. So the things that I'm going to talk about today are: how is China trying to turn around its image? How effective has China's health diplomacy been among European nations? And what went wrong with China's health diplomacy in particular EU countries? So there are countries like Germany and France, which were dependent initially on Chinese medical supplies. But even then, due to certain factors, they had quickly had this trust deficit with China. So just a few highlights. COVID-19 has definitely created a distressing year for Chinese global diplomacy because of the virus originating from China. And like you rightly said, it hit the coronavirus from WHO. And because of these factors and because of these instances, it sort of put Chinese public diplomacy in retrograde. And so this has definitely been a distressing year, and and I think China also aims at wanting to be the source of the virus. It wants to come across as being the source of the virus to a solution provider. The next point is China's soft power play is crucial in realizing the Chinese dream. I think the concept of national renewal and rejuvenation, and the fact that China aims to be a cultural exporter of sorts, much like the United States, and the volume of cultural exportation um, uh, by the United States, I think China sort of aims to be at that sort of level, and which is why soft power has been a crucial part of realizing the Chinese dream. The third point is supply shortfalls in Europe providing an opportunity for China. So the US, we're seeing the US abstaining from its traditional role as a crisis manager, especially with regard to its transatlantic allies and other European nations. And this is a vacuum that has been filled in well with China, with businesses taking a huge hit. Um, China has been able to use this as a geoeconomic opportunity to sell and to export medical supplies to countries that are that have been in dire straits. Countries like Italy, Greece, especially the Central and Eastern European countries, we see a large amount of dependency on China. The fourth point is mass diplomacy. I thought of highlighting that there because the sheer number, the sheer volume of masks that have been exported and to these European countries and to EU nations um, have been major, and even apart from, say, other medical supplies like or other medical equipment like PPEs or even ventilators, masks have been the most exported. So how has China really been doing this, and what is the kind of module that it's been following for its soft power push in the EU? The first is highlighting solidarity and aid. So through Chinese embassy situated in the EU, situated in the European countries, it's basically sending messages saying, telling the European public, hey, listen, we are here with you and we stand by you, and there's availability of Chinese aid, and we're here for your rescue. So this is one thing that they've been promoting consistently. The second is calling for international unity. The third is promoting China's fight against COVID-19 as a success story, like you rightly said in your introduction, where the first outbreak of the coronavirus in China was contained and they've been using this to garner faith, like to basically garner support, and it's a way to get people to especially the European public to have faith in, say, Chinese engagement, like soft power engagement in the EU with regard to the coronavirus. The fourth point is countering narratives critical of China. I will delve into that a little later. So this is coexistent with the wolf warrior diplomacy, which China has been pursuing, and especially in the wake of the coronavirus situation and the amount of spread that it has had among European nations. The way I'll be delving more into this later, so I'll talk about that. So I want to quickly just go through what has worked, what did work for China. So countries, especially like the CEE states, the Central and Eastern European states, have been on the receiving end of Chinese medical aid, monetary aid for medical supplies. And countries like Italy, who are part of the BRI, Italy, and other countries like Italy, Greece, Bulgaria, Australia have all been, we've seen a sort of dependency on Chinese aid, which sort of increased Chinese soft power influence in various regions. So that is the first point. The second thing that worked well was the influence of pro-China lobbies. So you have countries like Austria, Czechia, and Bulgaria, where there are factions in the government that persuaded, that were sort of sort of adamant on receiving aid from China, and even receiving medical supplies and equipment from China. And it's because of this push that sort of enabled this push from certain pro-China lobbies that sort of enabled countries to be more dependent on China for medical supplies. Even in the case of Czechia, where at first they were hesitant on depending on China for medical supplies, but because they were also falling short, and because of pressure from pro-China lobbies, they had to depend on China for medical supplies. And this is also true in the case for Bulgaria. So again, there were anti-China sentiments, and even amongst the European public, there was this, people started terming it as a Chinese virus, which soon, I think, the perception started changing because of the help of pro-China lobbies just working towards getting more medical aid. Yeah, so moving on to the third point, engagement of Chinese-owned healthcare insurance companies and medical suppliers. So there have been business sectors or businessmen in European nations that have been coordinating its efforts with Chinese-owned healthcare insurance companies operating in EU nations that have helped in pushing medical supplies in these European countries. So that has obviously increased the amount of influence, soft power influence in those countries. The fourth is Chinese embassies and their way of showing solidarity with the European public through the media. So Chinese embassies have played, I think, a very, very crucial role in just in the kind of information and the kind of information that they choose to put out through their media outlets, in the sense that they've been say the wolf warrior diplomacy. They've been very, yes. Okay, sir, I'm almost done. So they've been very quick to counter any criticism of China. And the embassies have been instrumental in doing that. So what went wrong? Spreading disinformation. So even the European Commission stated that, say, Russia and China were actively engaging in disinformation campaigns in the EU, which didn't fly too well with countries like France and Germany. And I think France was very sort of furious at the fact that China had spread this news that a bunch of healthcare workers had abandoned their jobs and were unhappy with the government because of this. Wolf warrior diplomacy, like I said, it's embassy website have been instrumental in countering any criticism against China, which hasn't worked too well with certain European states. And they've been very adamant on, they've been very headstrong, especially the Chinese have been very headstrong on following a particular message. And this didn't really go too well with certain European countries. The third one is quality of medical supplies, like you mentioned earlier. There have been faulty rapid tests and there have been about 600,000 face masks that have been imported from China that are defective. So this has been a huge contributor to the trust deficit between China and the EU countries. Research outcomes, COVID-19 has unmasked crack within the EU's edifice. So we see a huge strain of relationship, on relationships between—
30 seconds, my dear, 29.
Okay. Okay, so see a huge strain between states and the rest of the EU countries. It's uncovered the volume of dependency on China, and EU has been caught in the middle of growing US-China rivalry. Like I said, it's a vacuum that China has been able to fill in well. And European solidarity is slowly shaping up with countries like France and Germany taking the lead in uniting the
you.
European.
Thank you. I need to request you to bear with me.
Yes.
Thank you very much for bringing out some salient points of the Chinese diplomacy or mass diplomacy in Europe. Uh, you are absolutely right on both counts about the business lobbies that are at work to or pro-China business lobbies that are at work. But unfortunately, it's not just in Europe, it's also in India also. And it is in other countries too, because businesses very often look at dollar and cents, minor matters like sovereignty and pride and self-respect and security does not matter. I mean, which is really unfortunate. And the examples of China's wolf warrior diplomacy are both shocking and amusing. Imagine the Global Times, which is an instrument of the Chinese government, lashed out at Australia to say when Australians asked for an inquiry into the COVID-19, that Australia was like a chewing gum stuck on the sole of the Chinese foot or Chinese shoe. And the Chinese ambassador to UK, to Britain, when asked about Huawei, said that if, or so I'm paraphrasing him, that if Britain is going to toe the line of other countries, it cannot be called Great Britain. How is it great? I mean, God bless them for doing what they are doing. But I think Hoimonti is back. Hoimonti,
Yes, sir. Yeah.
welcome back.
Thank you.
Go right ahead, and you have 10 minutes, please.
Okay. So I'll not go to the introduction, and I'll just start from where I had stopped. That before going into explaining the China-India-Bangladesh relation, I will very briefly glance through China's growth as a powerful nation because it's very important. China's transformation from being one of the world's poorest countries to becoming the second largest economy in the world is an irrefutable fact. And few examples would suffice that from being merely 6% of America's economy in the early 1900s, they became 50% of the US economy in 2011. This shows how fast and strongly China grew. And China is the world's largest exporters, especially since 2014, whereas USA is the third and India is the 16th. China exports their goods to about 117 countries. This shows China's global economic outreach and strength. And President Xi's ambition of the Belt and Road Initiative only makes it more obvious. Additionally, I would like to say that when USA was ending its multilateral approach, China seized that opportunity and became the reigning bearer of the multilateral system. And here it becomes interesting because although China has always been present in South Asia, this was the time when this was a time that marks China's intentions in the region. Therefore, gradually, China's presence in the South Asian region became more apparent and powerful. At the moment, it is pertinent to bring the China factor in our discourse, knowing that China plays an important role in South Asia, be it with Pakistan or Sri Lanka, and of late, what we have seen during the only dispensation. And China's interest in Bangladesh is also considered as a big factor by India. But when we look at the India-China squabble, we must not forget that their problems are very old and have historical roots, and the current clashes are only reflections of those old pending issues that are probably being addressed now. And it is not a good idea for smaller countries in the neighborhood to get into old brawls because the process of their ups and downs has already created a number of dimensions in the relationships around them in the region. Having said all of that, now if I move on to India-China-Bangladesh relations, several points I would like to highlight again. First of all, there's a trend to scrutinize every step taken by Bangladesh towards China. And India and Bangladesh have come a long way, having endured various phases of ups and downs in the past 50 years. The relationship between the two is seemingly cordial right now. However, a sense of underlying tension is constantly felt. The anxiety towards Bangladesh foreign policy preferences by India is quite evident as well, especially due to the former's increasing collaborations with China, and the latter's and China is the latter's most important opponent of all time. Otherwise, what may have been perceived as a friendly tie in the millennium's race, where nation states are aspiring to achieve developments and advancements, all inclusive of social, political, economic, and military, Bangladesh recent decisions have made India more anxious. There are a lot of reports on Bangladesh growing proximity to China, uh, and speculations that Bangladesh is fall into the Chinese debt trap. But one must not overlook that China is one of the largest partners for us, but not the only one. Our trade with India is more than $10 billion. And we have United States, Japan, the European Union, and also the Middle East, who are very important players in our economic development and infrastructural partnerships. That must not be ruled out completely. And also thinking that South, and also making assumptions that the entire South Asian region is joining the BRI bandwagon blindly must also not be done. The intra-regional and sub-regional bodies, organizations like SAARC, BBIN, SAPTA, as Angshuman has also covered, and Sir, you have also mentioned, they're slow, they have been very slow and very low in their functionalities. But what repeatedly comes under the spotlight is China's 40 billion investment in Bangladesh along with the BRI. And no postulations are done on Japan's $3.5 billion development assistance financing in Bangladesh. So Bangladesh in the region have felt sandwiched between the two great neighbors, but have also played a balancing act for a long time. But at present, under the Prime Minister Hasina's reign, Bangladesh has experienced economic upward trajectory. And as per the reports, it seems like even through the pandemic, Bangladesh is most likely to register a GDP growth of 5%. So driven by the growth possibilities, the Bangladeshi Prime Minister has been asking for assistance to develop the infrastructure from both India and seems like I'm technologically a little challenged today. Um, so driven by that by the zeal to develop more, Bangladesh has been asking for assistance from both China and India. Now the thing is, China gets a preference over India mostly because of the fact that China has delivered on time most of the time, unlike India, where Indian projects have been delayed many times. So India and Bangladesh, so we have to understand that India and Bangladesh has always maintained a cordial relationship. And although Indian government has solved the boundary settlement issue, the long pending boundary settlement issue seamlessly, which has been a long-term irritant, there have been a sense of tension, especially since the last year or so, since the discussion of NRC and CAA began, and various other gestures and comments from the Indian side. Viewing the border relations, although the Modi government solved the boundary issue with Bangladesh, yet it probably has the highest number of casualties in the borders, whereby as many as 1,000 Bangladeshi civilians have been killed by the Indian BSF in the last 10 years. And as Ambassador Sir has mentioned that for India, the security issue is very important. These kind of border killings or the sentiment that has arisen out of the NRC or CAA has probably not gone down very well with Bangladesh to an extent. I would not like to highlight it like that, but maybe it did not go down very well with a section of Bangladeshis. And also, when it comes to the trans river issue, the Tista River issue has been pending for a long time, which has not been addressed. And all these issues have been creating a certain level of irritant for the Bangladesh side.
Hoimonti, two
Yes,
more,
sir.
please.
Okay, sir. Yeah. The manner in which the NRC and CAA was handled gave an impression that the Indian government wants to literally throw away the foreigners, or as they like to call it, the Bangladeshi infiltrators in the Bay of Bengal. And the gesture was not very friendly. So Bangladesh, on the contrary, has never been aggressive or never crossed the line while making political statements or giving counter responses, something that even Nepal is doing to India at the moment. So Bangladesh has never done so. In fact, in the last 2 months, India-Bangladesh decided to start a new connectivity route through Chittagong Port that's set to be operational in September. And India has gifted Bangladesh with 10 locomotives. So things are really progressing on the other hand. Having said all of this, if one tries to comprehend from a Bangladesh viewpoint, then we have to understand that we have 170 million people. We have 170 million mouths to feed, along with 100 million refugees. And we have a requirement of development, infrastructure, food, medicine, employment, and an enthusiasm to grow more. And Bangladesh has graduated from being LDC to a middle-income country, and our Prime Minister aims at improving more. So for what we need to understand that infrastructure and power generation is most important for us at the moment. And for that, we need funds. So when there is a speculation on whether Bangladesh is supporting Pakistan or drifting away from India or tilting towards China or not, we cannot do it in such a myopic manner, because Bangladesh has given special economic zone to the foreign investors and believes in economic equiproximity. So therefore, whether it's India or Korea or Japan, China, or even European Union, we have equal opportunity for all. We welcome investments as for our suitability, and there is no harm in that. I would just like to wrap up by saying that there are a number of factors.
15
Yes,
seconds, please. 15
Okay, I will just say that at this juncture, when nation states are striving for development, getting into any fight is not at the best interest of any country in the region, because it will only bring instability. And instead of addressing the issues separately, we can do it comprehensively to take the region forward. I will end here and I'll take questions so that I can elaborate on my points. Thank you.
Hoimonti, let me compliment you. I can say without any hesitation that you are wise beyond your years. I have rarely met anybody who would be so restrained, so matter of fact, and yet pull no punches. I appreciate your candor. And I also appreciate that you have not at all been polemical. You have stated facts dispassionately, compliments. This is a hallmark of an academic who has studied things well and who understands the geopolitics. So I'm very happy to get your perspective. There are so many things that you mentioned that I completely agree with. There are certain areas where I would naturally have a different viewpoint, but on the whole, I think you have enriched the session with your very insightful remarks. And yes, you are absolutely right that Bangladesh is a big country, 170 million people, country, and it is, you have a sovereign right to take decisions in your national interests, and that everything being placed under the microscope is something that needs to be reviewed. Every human life is important, and even the loss of one life, innocent life, is deeply disturbing. Yes, I am in agreement with you. Friends, we have, even with the best of intentions and with all the wholehearted support of all my co-panelists who have done a wonderful job. First of all, I would like to thank each one of you for indulging me, for being so understanding and making exceptionally substantive presentations. Now we have all of 15 minutes. So let us first take questions, if any, from the house, from the floor, and if there is time left, we will get into an internal discussion. Would somebody help me out? Paki, are you there, or anybody would be moderating this?
I'm there. I'll just let you know the questions ASAP.
So you will interject if there is a question. We can go ahead, right, with our discussion.
Yes, sir. You can absolutely go ahead with your discussion, and the questions will be right there in the chat box.
Very good. So if there is a question, please alert me. Now, let us, I'm opening this discussion to all the panelists. Let us first talk of BIMSTEC in that order. Angshuman, exactly in 1 minute to you and then to the others. Can you highlight or flag 2 or 3 points which can infuse a new life into BIMSTEC? 2 or 3, because there's an overload of agenda as I see it. I don't know whether you agree. So, yeah, go ahead, please.
Sure. Thank you, Ambassador. Yes, very quickly, as you said, there's an overload of agenda. In fact, BIMSTEC over the last decade has expanded its basket of agendas that it has to deal with, from I think 6 to 14. And at the level, there's a sense that it's taking on more than it can actually chew. I think, as I stated earlier, in the immediate short term, one of the things that can actually infuse or give a new lease of life to BIMSTEC is particularly collaboration over pandemic, over the pandemic, health cooperation, and also economic cooperation in the post-pandemic stage. The other thing that I did not mention is actually collaborating on the Rohingya crisis, specifically to show that BIMSTEC can be a constructive regional formation.
What is your suggestion for the crisis?
Right. So this is interesting because as Hoimonti stated, Bangladesh is hosting close to 800,000 refugees right now. And it was China who actually came and mediated between Bangladesh and Myanmar for the bilateral repatriation agreement. One would expect a grouping like BIMSTEC to actually step in and do that. Forge a constructive solution which is mutually beneficial for both Bangladesh and Myanmar, and also most importantly for the Rohingya refugees themselves. ASEAN also tried to intervene a bit from their end. BIMSTEC, I did not say BIMSTEC doing anything at all as a formation.
Okay. Fellow panelists, any comments? Hoimonti in particular, but anybody else? If there is any comment, I would invite the panelists on this issue to unmute themselves and go ahead, please.
Okay, so I would like to add, and I would like to add to Angshuman that because when we are talking about BIMSTEC and we are talking about India's role, India being the leader, I mean, being the biggest country in the region, there is a natural expectation that with certain problems and issues, India will take a leadership role, which has not been addressed in matters of the Rohingya refugees. So these are some important aspects that must be taken into consideration, and to make organizations like BIMSTEC or even SAARC to revive for the betterment of the region.
All right. Anybody, any other panelists? Okay, there is a question for Dr. Barua saying why I mean, I'm reading it as it is, but the question is, why are small neighbors like Nepal, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka often blamed by India for bringing China in the region?
Um, that is exactly what I try to point out, that um, there is the China factor, and it is very important for India. We know the what is going on in the Indo-Pacific, uh, with the Indo-Pacific area, and how China and why China exactly wants to expand in the South Asian region. I wouldn't say India tries to blame, but naturally, if China is what China is doing, gives an impression that they're trying to um, surround India from all sides and suffocate it. Naturally, it will not be taken down very well with India, um, because India wants to, and also India aspires to become the most powerful nation in South Asia and in Asia. So yeah, I think I.
Thank you.
So,
Any other panelists?
sir,
Any?
can I add to what
Go
Hoimonti has
ahead,
said?
go ahead, Aparajita. Go ahead, please.
Sir, every country, whether it is small or big, they always work on the principle of their national interest. So small neighbors, they will see where their interests are being fulfilled. They won't go on the pattern of favoring India or China. They will favor their national interest. So India cannot blame its neighbors. India uh, should try to give such good policies and things to its neighbor which can counter China, which China is providing to its neighbor. So instead of blaming, it should try to do such things for its neighbor that they are automatically pushed towards India and not China. This is what I want.
So the ball is in India's court, as you say that, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right,
Yes,
lovely.
because India is the biggest country and they
Hmm.
have the infrastructural might, and monetarily India is more powerful than the smaller countries. And throughout my presentation also, as I've mentioned, be it Bangladesh or Nepal, we are all striving uh, towards more development. And we will take investments from whoever right now is going to
Hmm.
offer it to us. And if a project is taken, we would expect those projects are being fulfilled on time and not neglected or not delayed. So if and we are going to accept it from whichever nation, and if that's China, then we are going to take it from China. But that doesn't necessarily mean that in Bangladesh or Nepal, or I will not talk about Pakistan here, that we are drifting away from India. We are just trying to get the best for our interest. Thank you.
Absolutely, I agree with fellow panelists that every nation has a right to do what the nation deems appropriate or desirable to further its national interests, so long as it does not hurt the national interests of any other country. And the developmental needs are huge, including the developmental needs of India, no doubt about that. Any other point before we move to, okay. SAARC. Any thoughts on whether SAARC can be revived? And if so, what would it take to revive SAARC?
Ambassador, if I may, I'm sorry to interject. I think there's a question directed at me. If I'm not wrong.
I've chosen to ignore that question. So
All right, all right. I thought you did not.
no, I've seen that.
Sure.
So
Uh,
yeah, Paki, you wanted to say something?
No, so I was just acknowledging the fact that you know the
So,
question.
any panelists, any comment about SAARC?
yeah, yes, sir. I would like
Go
to say
ahead.
something.
Go ahead, Aparajita.
Sir, we all know that the countries lack political there is a lack of political will and trust among members. So the countries, they should understand that COVID-19, it is a health problem, health issue, and it goes beyond borders. And South Asian countries, the population density is so high that even if one country is infected to large extent, it will first infect the neighbors, not other region or other countries. So it will first spread to other region. So the countries should understand that this is a problem, and this needs a collaborative effort among the countries. It cannot be handled single-handedly, and it is beyond borders. The other thing is, Pakistan should also understand that this health issue requires a collaborative effort, and at this point it cannot raise issues like Kashmir or whatever problem the countries face, and it should first focus on the pandemic problem.
Dr. Aparajita, my question, how can you stop Pakistan from doing if they are determined to do that? Can you
Sir,
gag them?
No, I cannot stop. But sir, I have one suggestion that the decision which are taken in SAARC, it is on the basis of consensus that all countries have to agree,
All
and
right.
because of
All
which.
right. Thanks. Hoimonti, you were saying something?
No, I was just saying that Pakistan needs to understand that if you live first, then you can take your issues further later. So for now, and with the meeting that was held on the SAARC forum by Prime Minister Modi, where all the leaders had joined, it shows that a pandemic has brought us down on our knees, and it is not impossible. It maybe they're not doing it, but it is not impossible to come together and fight, be it a pandemic or any other issues. This is an ego fight.
Yeah.
And so
Well,
faster Pakistan
right.
realizes that, I don't know how this is going to happen, but the faster Pakistan.
Yeah. In fact, Angshuman made a very good point when he was speaking about BIMSTEC cooperation, that imbibing or exchanging best practices is the need of the hour. And then there, I think there has been a collective failure of the Committee of Nations, because many of our countries have just worked in silos. And, it's like feeling the elephant from different angles and giving a verdict. Any other comment, Angshuman? Do you
Yes.
have a comment?
I just wanted to sort of do a quick sort of review of what the SAARC meeting actually did. I think it's been almost 5 months since that meeting was held. And India extended things like the integrated disease surveillance portal, activated the SDMC and all of that. But I think now is a good time to actually see, has that meeting actually achieved anything tangible or significant on the ground? And my sort of reading and findings say that not very much has been achieved from that meeting, including from the SAARC emergency fund, COVID emergency fund. I think there were 2 tranches released, one to Bhutan, but that was also mostly on India-Bhutan bilateral grounds, not really within the SAARC framework. So initially, the energy that I saw from that meeting, I think at a level that tapered off as the pandemic went on. So more research is needed to find out what was the exact impact of things like the integrated disease surveillance portal, the SDMC. What did these mechanisms actually achieve on the ground in the various countries?
Yeah, got it. Before we have basically 2 minutes, any panelist who wants to make an intervention for 30 seconds? Any?
Sorry to interrupt. Before you go forward, there's another question in the chat box.
All right. Okay, let me take a look and see whether what to do with the question. Can India aspire to be regional and global power without having any strong regional, such as question from, okay, and this is question from?
You too.
Sorry?
So people are also watching us from YouTube, so they also drop their questions from there.
We take anonymous questions, is it?
There must be someone, but they drop it on YouTube because people are watching on Facebook and YouTube.
All right. Okay, any panelist, 30 seconds or 29, can India aspire to be a regional and global power without having a strong regional framework in place? Anybody?
May I quickly?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
please.
Sorry.
Okay.
Very quickly. Okay, if you want to go first.
No, it's okay.
Go ahead.
Right. I think I would say no. The clear answer from my end is no. I don't think India can aspire to be a regional and global power without a strong regional framework, because we are no more in a unipolar or bipolar world. We're in a very much multipolar world, and regionalism is very much in vogue. And given the global value chains and the cross-border trading in today's world, I don't think India can aspire to climb up the ladder of global power without first focusing on the region and becoming a constructive regional power, in this case, a South Asian power.
Thank you. Aparajita, Priyanjali.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, I agree to what Angshuman has said.
You're
That,
not supposed to agree. You're supposed to come.
sir,
No, no.
I'll comment after agreeing.
Go ahead.
No, India cannot become a global power. The answer is no, because even our former president I.K. Gujrali has also said in his comment once that we cannot fight our neighbors and become a global power. So if you inspire to become a global power, then
Who said that? Who said that?
the former
Fight.
Prime Minister I.K. Gujral.
You cannot fight your neighbors and be a global power.
Sir, I
Okay,
said,
not to worry. I'll check. Okay.
sir, please check. And so if you aspire to become a global power, then first you have to have an influence in the region.
Absolutely.
Because if you keep fighting with your region and have problems with your region, then how can you be a global power?
All right. Any last comment by any of my other panelists before we wind up?
No, sir.
No, sir, I'm good.
All right. You know, I am a former diplomat, so I'm allowed to speak freely. It is rare for me to come across and to interact with such a wonderful panel. Each one of you have been amazing, and I would request NIICE to have me interact only with this panel in future. If you ever invite me to interact on any session, you guys are amazing for the simple reason that none of you kind of wavered. You came straight to the point. You called a spade a spade. Whether one agrees or doesn't agree is a different matter. I happen to agree with 90% of what you all said. All that is left for me is to say thank you very much. Thank you, NIICE, for organizing this particular interaction. I think it is more substantive. And Pakhi, thank you very much. God bless you all. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Even we would like to express a sincere gratitude to you for agreeing to chair and moderate this session. Our sincere thanks also goes to all the speakers for being a part and delivering such comprehensive and convincing presentations. You all are definitely inspirations for all of us here. I've been studying BIMSTEC and SAARC in college, and thanks for providing a deeper insight into all of that. We would like to acknowledge our gratitude to all our friends from the diplomatic community, experts, academia, media, and different organizations. Finally, I must also mention our deep sense of appreciation for audience who participated in the webinar and those who are watching us live on our YouTube channel. Thank you for your valuable time and attention and for making this session productive with your questions. We're truly honored to have you all with us this morning and hope to stay connected with you all in future as well. It's been a great pleasure. Also, do join us in the next session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Paki.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. It was a really interesting session. I was listening to you.
Thank you.
And thank you for your time. Thank you, everyone. Angshuman, Hoimonti, Aparajita,